Hello and welcome to this video on Etna by Patching Panda, a triple analog multimode filter under smart snapshot sequencing control. And here's what's to come. This video is sponsored by Patching Panda. Patching Panda have a history of both multi-channel and sequenced shifting filter types with the Vibrazum and Moon Phase filters in their product history. Etna builds upon these ideas in that it's free high headroom, clean multimode analog filters with the idea of snapshots, with snapshot control over filter frequencies, resonance and amplitude levels. Snapshots are always capturing these slider values, so there's no need to save them, there's no menu, you don't need to remember to do anything, and you can hit play here and have this live capture, automations and movements to create snapshot sequences across all this filter control. Running down the panel here, we have three inputs, and input 1 normals across if you'd like one input to feed all three filters, and each filter has its own individual output, as well as a parallel mixed output for all three filters. Each filter has a normal frequency control and a frequency CV input, they normal as well, and those CV inputs have their own individual CV depth attenuators. There's an all frequency control knob in the middle, and an all frequency control CV input, and an additional FM input with an FM attenuator. And each filter has a switch that will take it from a 4-pole low pass to 2-pole band pass or a 2-pole high pass filter type. The sliders then move away from these more typical analog filter type controls, and we can then adjust per snapshot, kind of per saved state if you like, the frequency of each of the three filters, the Q, which is the resonance for all of them, and then 3 AM sliders here, which are the 3 amplitude levels for the output of the 3 filters. There's also a glide slider that per snapshot allows you to set a glide amount to kind of morph and fade between snapshots rather than just move instantly to the new settings. Snapshots are controlled on this encoder, and the selected snapshot is always capturing. As I say, you don't need to save anything or recall anything, and you can also just hit play and just live capture filter level, frequency and resonance changes to build up sequenced snapshot animations on the fly. By default, the module plays at 120 BPM, but there's a clock input, and by holding the encoder we can divide that clock input. You can manually adjust the length from 1 to 8 snapshots, and there's also a length CV input, so you can CV change the amount of snapshots that will sequence through. There's a reset input and a position input to CV address the position and which snapshot you'd like to be in externally. Internally, you can set this while edit all is on. We can move through this being a forward motion, a pendulum or random playback direction too, and there's a nice sort of bonus frequency free here, the frequency of the third filter frequency slider here, that outputs a value like a normal sequenced voltage, so you can sequence the rest of your modular system as your snapshots change. And before we get into the instant fun and musical results of these snapshots and moving through them, let's just hear the sound of the filters. So let's listen to the sound of the filters, and we're listening to the mix out with a single low pass filter for now. Shift to band pass. High pass. But of course, where this really shines is being more than just a basic filter. Coming out of the mix out, the inputs will get the same saw wave. So let's add in, say, 3 band passes, turning up their level, switch them all to bands. We could sweep all of these with the central knob. Or we could maybe set up a low pass on 1, just to have some low end coming through. Let's set up a high pass on 3. Have that a little lower in the mix. And a band in the middle. So that's just a quick look at the sound of Etna. So 3 filters certainly isn't anything to sniff at. There's a lot to be gained from multiple filters in a modular system. But the snapshots are instant musical fun and highly flexible for a range of patches, like creating ping-pongs on any mono delay effect, creating harmonic pans, spectral shifting drones, or formant bass riffs. All the patches in the video are on screen and down below. Do skip around as you like. And let's dive in. So here's a quick patch just to say that even without the snapshots and sequencing, 3 filters is certainly not to be sniffed at. So here I'm using Etna as a really quick and fun kind of instant techno pattern maker. I have a basic 3-note arpeggio to a single oscillator, and it's a single saw wave in and the mix output that we're using. Now I'll remove the arpeggio, here's the drums, let's mute those for now, and as I move things around while this is playing, it simply records in these new snapshots and settings, and we're instantly getting these interesting tonal patterns emerging. Now over this output, I'm going to first sidechain it, and then also add an envelope playing 16th notes. So that's the mix out into 2 VCAs to do this ducking and envelope control. 3-note arpeggio back in. And the drums. And while this is playing, let's just jam around one more time. As I say, kind of carelessly, just having fun with it. In this patch, I'm using Etna like a creative effects router. I have 3 outputs here. The 3 outputs go to my mixer, and if I mute all but the first one, has my input, which is just a sequenced saw wave oscillator through a VCA with an envelope, and that input's normalizing to all the channels. Bringing the filter down, I'm using this modulation signal as a direct frequency 1 modulator. And then on the second channel, second output, I have a delay signal, and if I hit play, we can see the level of channel 2 changing, and the frequency of the bandpass filter on level 2 changing as well. So on different scenes, or different snapshots, I'm routing different amounts of bandpass filtered copies of the input. So it's on, then off, then on but with a higher bandpass frequency, and off again. And then the third channel is a high pass filter. That's off on the first 3 snapshots and on the last one, and that routes out to my reverb. So this is playing. Let's bring output 2 that feeds my delay. And then output 1 again, that's kind of my dry sound if you like, but low pass filter modulated. And So you can go through here and use the AM, the VCA or level controls to bring sounds in and out on certain steps, change their filtering, and route copies of the same input as kind of a dry signal and multiple effects outs, like a creative effects router or sequenced effects send. So this is some of the most fun I've had making modular beats for a while. The sounds you're currently listening to aren't going through Etna. I have a kick, kind of echoing clap, and offbeat hi-hat, and you can see me just muting these to the right of the screen. And then on channel 1 coming into Etna, I just have straight 16th note clocked hi-hats, no movement, nothing exciting, it's just a sample being clocked and re-triggered. This is normalizing to the second filter. All of these are low pass filters, and I'm taking the left and right as 1 and 2 here. So anything I do on this left side, filter 1 and filter 2 will be on the right. And then using channel 3 in and out, mono in my mixer, again just clocked 16th note percussion. Now hitting play on this, we're going to first start creating some rhythm and some interest and kind of dynamic pattern by simply creating these snapshots live. And let's just adjust the volume of this sound. Instantly creates an engaging riff. Let's then adjust the filter, again, live as it just plays. And just from this repeating percussion sound, we've now got some interesting percussion to work with. Muting that, let's do the same for the hi-hats here. I'm going to do this independently on channels 1 and 2, so left and right moves differently. I'll leave the kick in as a reference and just unmute the sound here, first adjusting the levels of the hi-hat. There they are on their own. Let's adjust the filters. And again, a way more interesting, engaging pattern. Let's bring in the other sound on channel 3. Bring in some resonance, because this will affect everything. Other drums back in. We've created a lot of movement from what was otherwise just pretty boring clocked static percussion sounds. So here we're looking at audio rate modulation, and I think this is giving some really fascinating results. It's in stereo, it's a mix of all 3 filters. It's just got this really exciting, dynamic, gritty, weird kind of edge to it. So in the first snapshot here, here's the kind of base state of the patch. It's one input, a saw wave from this oscillator, and a sine wave from this oscillator is going into the frequency to modulate all 3 filters. The first filter, I'm taking out in mono, and that's a low pass filter. Outputs 2 and 3 I'm taking as a stereo signal, so they're panned hard left and right in my mixer, and I'm modulating them in opposing ways, using one attenuator set positive and the other negative to give a stereo audio rate modulated bandpass that blends against the low pass in the center. I have an envelope coming into FM, so that will modulate all of the filters. And as I add a volt per octave sequence to my oscillator, my input saw wave is moving in pitch, but my sine wave audio rate modulator is static. And just that in itself is giving some interesting results. Nasty West Coast, more experimental edge. But this is clocked in time, so let's hit play and get these snapshots moving. I'm bouncing between 7 snapshots, altering filter level, filter cutoffs, resonance amounts. It's a really dynamic, animated, stereo audio rate modulation, triple filter patch. So you can hear that the filter cores ping really nicely here. Channel 1, or filter 1 rather, is pinged by its own rhythm, panned hard left. The center one a different rhythm in the center. For filter 2 and filter 3 is panned hard right, again with its own independent trigger rhythm coming in. I have some FM here from an oscillator. But of course, hitting play, we can just start to move through different sounds here. As well as having the individual outs, this is being clocked to the sequence that I'm triggering with. The mix out feeds some effects. So that's some pinging and sequencing through various different snapshots of a triple pinged triple bandpass filter. So here's a patch I put together to show the clock divider for the incoming clock for moving through the snapshots. I have some effects in the background, which I'll remove in my mixer here. And then on channel 1, I'm blending 2 operatic PWM pulses. One oscillator is droning, one is synced. That's mixed into the first input here, which normalizes to all the filters. And at the rate of my clock, I have an envelope modulating the cutoff. That comes out directly and is panned mono in my mixer. And then hard left and right out of 2 and 3. I have 2 bandpass filters with 2 different LFOs modulating those filter cutoffs. Low pass back down the center. So you can consider this the kind of base state of the patch, and as I hit play, we'll start to clock through different snapshots of these 3 filters. Holding down the encoder. This is now going to divide this clock. Whether that's divide 2, 3, 4. I might go over divide by 3. Pressing the encoder again, back to the normal settings. Let's bring the effects back in my mixer. Now play around just to adjust these snapshots live as it plays. So here we have a triple bandpass and gliding formant patch. I have some sequence modulation to FM coming from my pattern generator. So we can get these filters kind of dancing and bubbling away alongside my main pitch sequence. Removing that and removing the volt per octave from the oscillator. This is a deep saw wave into input 1. Taking output 1 from the first filter as mono in my mixer, and then 2 as hard left and 3 as hard right. I have 4 snapshots, gliders up on all of them, and the 3 frequencies of each bandpass filter, and the resonance is adjusting per snapshot. And as I'm panning these around, you'll hear kind of filters move either together, apart, back together again, up or down. Certainly in headphones, it's a really interesting spectral shift as these 3 bandpass filters glide around. Now Etna is clocked from quarter notes here, but I'm dividing it down, holding that encoder, divided all the way here by 8. So I've really slowed this down as much as I can here from quarter notes to start with, and then my pitch sequence is moving in 16th notes. Adding in this FM sequence, which moves at 16th notes as well. Really glottal, throaty, croaky. Slidey, glidey, formant action. So here we're using Etna to weave in and out of 3 different synth lines, and when I divide down the clock, almost like a scene or section changer based on the differences within these snapshots. Outside of Etna, I have some drums playing in my mixer. I'll mute those for now. And here we have the output of Etna. So the top snapshot here is kind of my default state to demo the patch, and on the first channel I have my bass line. These are 3 low pass filters. If I filter this back, I have some envelope movement from the rest of this patch, so you always get a bit of a kind of percussive edge to this bass sound. The second channel is a randomly playing arpeggio. There's no separate modulation here, it's just the snapshot itself. And that goes out into some echo and reverb effects. Channel 3 is my main melody. And like channel 1, that has its envelope coming in here as well. So even if I filter it back, you've got this nice kind of percussive twang on the filtering on these notes. And that goes out and feeds an echo. So turning all of these up, these are my 3 synth lines, 3 outputs, 2 of which feed some effects. It all mixes back together in my mixer. Fully open low pass filters. As I go through each snapshot, these are like different scenes where the emphasis has changed from these different parts. You can hear that one emphasizes the arpeggio and the melody a bit more. Bass comes back in more prominent. This turns down the first 2 channels and we just have the melody. So as I clock through these, and I'm clocking at 16th notes relative to the sequence. This is the clock coming in here. With Etna, you can change playback mode. With edit all on, hitting play changes the playback from forward, pendulum and random. I have this randomly playing through here. Let's slow down the clock that I'm feeding this. Let's actually divide this down, holding the encoder. Let's divide by 8. It's more like slower scene changes now. Bringing the drums back in. Let's speed this clock back up just for some fun kind of weaving in and out at a much faster clock rate. So in this patch, we're going to look at adjusting the length via CV modulation, randomly resetting, and also taking that frequency-free control output as a sequencer, a manually played live captured sequencer for other things. Now remove my resetting and random length adjustments. Here's the base state of my patch. The drums are entirely separate to Etna, so I'll remove them for now. This is 2 oscillators, and I'm taking the frequency-free output, which is the blue trace here, to sequence PWM and sync. If I adjust this to record in new snapshots, I can adjust the level of pitch change for these syncing oscillators. Now if we start to play around with random resets, I have a random trigger here, which I'll patch into the reset. You can hear it playing around with this rhythm, and that against a steady beat. It's almost got this kind of like beat juggling, resetting beat thing going on with that random reset. Now removing that, let's use a random voltage to length. You can see here the length changing. And again, we have a similar effect here, creating interesting little sub-patterns of different amounts of steps. You can do both at once, resetting this randomly, adjusting the length randomly, and taking that frequency output from frequency 3 to come around the rest of my patch and sequence my oscillators. Now here's a patch using Etna, like a kind of ping-pong auto panner. If I mute these outputs for a second, I have the sine wave from my oscillator with some through 0 FM from another oscillator coming into a VCA, playing a 7-step sequence with just a clocked envelope opening up the sound in my VCA. But muting those in the mixer, this is the output of Etna, and I'm taking output 1 and 2 from filter 1 and 2 as hard left and hard right signals. I have 2 snapshots, where in succession these filters turn on and off, so it's like an auto router, auto panner, and this is clocked in time with my sequence. So it sounds like it's ping-ponging around. It's a little bit extreme on its own, but bringing in the original sine wave VCA sound, then adding this in, it's a really interesting way to pan harmonics around and layering that in with another patch. So here we're going to look at how to ping-pong any delay and create more interesting sequenced filtered echo spaces. This is an extension of the previous patch where I kind of ping-ponged around different harmonics and layering for my synth voice. And here, I'm sequencing and panning around a basic delay. Now muting everything in the mixer, let's unplug this for a second. Here's the dry sound. A very basic 4-step sequence that's not going to change at all, and that's in my mixer on its own channel. And then listening to the delay, here's a basic mono delay. Now taking this delay and patching it into Etna, I'm clocking Etna at the same rate of the delay, so we're moving through the snapshots with each delay repeat, and if I just go down to 2, you can hear these panning around. Turning off the play for a second, I'm treating output 1 as my hard left signal, and output 2 as my hard right signal. These are low pass filters, frequencies just somewhere around the middle, just for a little bit of colour, with a touch of resonance. So as I bounce between snapshots, we move between the volumes going up and down on each side, acting like a ping pong. If we start to add more snapshots in, we can start to get some more interesting filtered sequence delay effects. And I also have an LFO here. Let's go back down to just 2 stages again. LFO into FM. So I can generally have these filters opening and closing via an external LFO while ping-ponging around. So this patch explores as slower glide and kind of morphing transitions as I can make with the module. I've added the full amount of glide to every single snapshot, and this is 3 bandpass filters over a PWM pulse or square wave. The 3 outputs, 1 patch as mono, 2 as hard left and right, as I've been enjoying throughout the video. And we're morphing through the levels of these bandpass filters, so one side might go down as one goes up and so on. Their frequencies and the resonance, as I say, with the full amount of glide to make the slowest, most kind of morphing glacial filter shifts as I can. There's tons of effects, I'll remove that for now. So this is the dry outs mixed in the mixer. This gets really fun when we play arpeggios into it, so I'll enable the arpeggiator on my keyboard and play with the rate, play with the notes. get those effects back in. If you've got this far in the video, drop a hard sync in the comments. How are you using multiple filters in your systems? How would you like to use Etna with your modules? Leave a comment down below and let me know. Head to patreon.com/DivKid to support the work that I do, gaining access to exclusives and to join my community. Hit like and subscribe, that all helps out the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!